Welcome back to 2C TV. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news coming from the so-called new Syria under the leadership of Al-Jolani. It is falling apart tonight as a protest, something that started as a peaceful protest has now resulted in huge clashes in a number of cities across the country as Al-Jolani's security forces have been shooting at the protesters. Alawites are out. The Kurds are fighting back. The Druze and the Christians demand independence and sovereignty. And of course, the Islamic State, Al-Jolani's former friends, are also kicking off. So there's a lot to cover here. We're going to get your reaction in the live chat. We also have a very interesting live poll in the live chat, so check that out. First things first. Massive demonstration started by the Alawites in the cities of Tartus, Jabalia, and Latakia, which was the main bit, by the way, and also Salhab, Masyuf, and Safita. Now, the Alawite neighborhoods. Now, it's quite interesting because when Bashar al-Assad was in charge, the public position was that he is Team Alawites. Technically, he's keeping the Alawites safe, and he's trying to control the whole of Syria. But a lot of these Alawites are not happy with Al-Jolani, obviously, but they're also not happy with Assad and how he managed the country. So these guys came out also in Homs and surrounding areas, calling for federalism. They want federalism in Syria to have some stability. They simply wanted to protest. That's all they did. The problem here is that they were dealing with Al-Jolani, and Damascus sent out their security forces. Things escalated from here. So let's go to the first video. Casualties are reported among the Alawite protesters around Al-Azhari roundabout, which is in Latakia. Several local sources have also reported killings after security forces opened a fire at the demonstrators. Let's go to the first one. Yeah. Huge number of people have been injured as well. Now, clashes resulted in the killing of at least 3 people. This is what's been reported by the Syrian government themselves. There are other sources who are saying that the number of people who are dead is probably more than 3, but dozens have also been injured. This is 2 days, by the way, 2 days after a mosque was bombed in Homs. Now, it's all connected to everything that's been going on in the region and in Syria. Because recently we've had a lot of attacks by the Islamic State on Jolani's government. We've also had the clashes between the Kurds and Jolani. We've also had the Druze and the Christians defending themselves. Alawites are finally back out. Things are going to get much worse for the man who self-identifies as president.
يا شباب عم يجي الاغتصاب من هون. الآن الاستدعاء بشكل مباشر على
Crazy.
يا شباب جيب عرضه هيك.
Someone said, will Erdogan save Jolani? I'll have an update on that as well, by the way. Oh, look at that. Now, a lot of these clashes were in Latakia, but also we started seeing videos coming from Tartus and other cities in Syria. This is heavy gunfire that erupted in Tartus. Let's go to the next one quickly. Actually, they went up. Oops, apologies for that. They went up to this. Yeah, that's Tartus. called crazy. Yeah. You can see Jolani is not able to control his own territory, so he's got way too many enemies. And he thought, he was naive enough to think that he can easily take over from Assad. And just because Jolani has experience in militant groups and terrorist groups like the Islamic State, he thought that he could be a better leader than Assad. He thought that just because you're a militant and you're a terrorist or whatever you are, you will be able to be a good manager. Being a manager of a government and a country that's already in a mess, it's not an easy thing to do. He overpromised, and now he's struggling to control his own government. Anyway, what started as a peaceful protest got violent immediately after government forces and also alongside so-called civilian militias joined in to fight the protesters. And the next few videos that we're going to show you proves that it's not just the police, it's not just the security forces. There are so-called plainclothing civilians who are in favor of the government who decided to bring out their guns and just voluntarily join in the fight. Al-Jolani is about to become Al-Salami. They have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea. None of them are experienced in defense. The security forces, as part of Jolani's government, they are very good at offensive attacks. They're very good at being extremists and terrorists, but they are not good at defense. Defending is very different. And that's why they're all just all over the place. And I would not be surprised that the number of people who have been reported killed today is actually higher. We will give you guys we'll show you the photos of those who have now been killed. But Syrians protesting have now been seen burning the flag of Turkey, or as Erdogan would say, Turkiye, during the protest for obvious reasons, because Erdogan and his intervention in Syria is the reason that this place is now a complete mess. Worse than before. That's the Turkish flag. There we go. Crazy times. Now, for those who are going to get excited that Assad is going to come back, don't get too excited, because while the Alawites have been leading the protests and burning the Turkish flag, a lot of them have also been burning photos of Bashar al-Assad, because they still see him as a traitor, because he did betray the Alawites. He was supposed to be keeping them protected and keeping them safe, and he also said the same thing about the other groups, including Christians, but he was persecuting the Christians. He was on the surface protecting churches, the buildings. Look, I got the churches protected, but actually the Christians were getting jailed. And so Alawites are also burning the photos of Assad today. They're still chanting and demanding for federalism in Syria. It's the only way. Now, a number of these guys, the Syrians who were out, as I said, they were not necessarily officially part of the police or the security forces, but they were carrying the pistols and they were using them against the Alawite protesters. Let's go to the next evidence that we have. Now, there's another video. This is again from Azhari roundabout in Latakia, and the thing about this is that a lot of the pro-government forces were posting videos on social media. They stopped posting videos because I think they realized that things are going to get ugly, and the pro-government side are going to look much worse than the protesters. But this was one of the last videos we got from Latakia earlier on. Let's go to that. It's not a good look. Mayhem. Now, there are two issues with this, by the way. It's not just a bad look because it would show that the government forces are being very aggressive, but these images, it's not a good look for Jolani when he wants to portray himself as a good, strong leader and manager. You know, he's fine with normal videos of some protest going out there or whatever, but this level of basically civil war is embarrassing for the Syrian government, the new Syrian government, and he can't really hide this because it's 2025, almost 2026, and everybody has a mobile phone. Everybody has access to the internet. It's going to be very difficult to control the narrative. Now, the anti-government sources also claimed, the Alawites were claiming earlier that Jolani's regime forces tried to run people over with their cars. We're still waiting for evidence, but this is one of the videos that they mentioned when they claimed this. We can't verify that claim. So there's a car on the right-hand side that's part of the security forces. Not that one, the other one on the right. But that's not actually moving, and there's that one as well. But they were saying that they were using the trucks to essentially run people over. There might be another video. We'll wait for that. But to be objective, we didn't see the evidence in that. But protesters managed to get control of the security forces' bikes and cars and some of the weapons. They started destroying them. Why not? Because when you get angry, just burn everything down like the French. Let's go. Mess. Someone in the live chats. Franklin says ban cars. Yeah, it's the car's fault, isn't it? Usually. Now that's gonna potentially get worse tomorrow. Did someone just say, is this happening now, or is this a summary of the past week? Nothing was happening in the past week. This is now. This is today, and it's still going on tonight. And I didn't really mention anything about a week or the last few days. No, this is now. This is today, and we haven't had these protests. This is literally the first day that the Alawites decided to rise up against Jolani. Now, just as a summary of what's been going on again today and recently, you've had the Kurds who are seeking autonomy. They're still fighting. You got the Druze and the Christians who are rejecting a centralized Islamic rule. They want their own self-determination. The Alawites are now obviously an open revolt, not because they want Assad back, but because they want federalism and they want to have a level of stability for themselves, but also the others in the country. Let's go to the next clip. Yes, tribal conflict at its finest. It's a mess. What's going on in Sueda? We haven't actually received any update on that. Not much. Well, regarding these level of protests, because the Alawites are primarily here right now. Now, one of the main questions is, and I'm asking you guys in the live chat because I'm going to get your reaction quickly, can Jolani take back control? Because Assad completely messed up. The narrative was that Assad won before he fell. Assad won the civil war. Did he actually win? Because Syria fell apart and you had a chunk of Syria under the control of Russia, chunk of it the Kurds, the other chunk basically the Druze who were being protected, the other chunk that were basically HCS or the Islamic State, and then a smaller chunk that was Assad. That Assad was not really in charge of the whole country. Jolani, the same. He was supposed to be unifying the country. It was never going to happen. He's a Sunni extremist. How is he going to convince the Kurds? How is he going to convince the Druze or even the Alawites to get behind him? If you had a different type of leader, maybe, but not with him. Now, in the middle of all this, because the Americans know that the backlash could reach the Kurdish areas, and they've known the troubles will come regardless because they've had the Islamic State attacking Jolani and the American forces recently. The Americans have sent out more support to the Kurds, which is the right thing to do, because the pro-democracy side and the freedom fighters of the Kurdish community, they are the only side that the Americans are backing, obviously, in this case. And there's a diplomatic relationship between President Trump and the so-called president of Syria, because you have to, because technically he's the president of Syria. Well, he's the president of Damascus, the capital, right? And but the Americans, regardless of that, haven't stopped sending support to the Kurds, and that is the most important thing. Just as an update, this is what we are dealing with in regards to those who have now lost their lives today. A member of the security forces, the one on the left hand side next to my face, he's dead, and two people from Latakia, the two young kids on the right hand side, one of them from Dartur, which is a Alawite majority district. And so the three that have now been confirmed by the government and the health authorities, but as we said, the number is probably much higher than this, because they said that these guys died early this morning in the beginning of the conflict, the civil conflict. And the news was delayed because obviously it's chaos. So you have to take them to hospital, alert the authorities. Somebody has to tell the government, get the names, get the faces, and then publish it. And the infighting is still going on right now across the country. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers increase of those who have been killed. We'll keep an eye on this as usual. Let's get some quick reaction from you guys. The reason for protests was protesters shooting as well. Yeah, so they were basically they managed to take control of some of the guns from the security forces, the Alawites, the protesters, the anti-government protesters, and they also decided to shoot back. So one of the people who are killed is actually from the security forces. So both sides started to shoot, but not everybody from the protesters' side was armed. The majority, as we showed from the beginning, it was a peaceful protest, it was a march. They were just chanting and walking around until the government forces came and started shooting people, and obviously then the fight back started. It sounds like some Islamist carnival or festival. It's just the Middle East at this point. Over the last, I would say, people think everything started kicking off from 2011. The chaos in the Middle East overall, it was boiling up since the 80s, and now you can see the result of it. I wonder what your opinion is about 4,000 troops from a place supposedly known as Pakistan being deployed in Gaza as part of the peacekeeping efforts. They are completely irrelevant and it's symbolic. Everything that the Pakistanis have been saying, even when it came to threatening the state of Israel, when Israel was doing its counter-terrorism operation. Nobody cares about Pakistan. Nobody cares what Pakistan says or do. And they could just do whatever they want to do and everybody will just ignore them as usual. They're not even competent enough to do a target practice and be successful. So you can just ignore the Pakistanis as usual. Poor little motorcycle being attacked by lions. Yep. And Libel says Jolani put on a suit and lost respect and magic. That is the thing is, I know that's supposed to be a little bit of a joke, but symbolically, it's actually connected to everything that's happened to him and to his crew in government. As I've been saying over the last couple of weeks about his troubles with his former friends, the Islamic State who are now attacking the government, not these guys, these are the Alawite protesters today. Symbolically speaking, everything goes back to his whole image that's changed. You know, there's wearing a suit and a tie and trimming the beard a little bit, cutting his hair, goes hand in hand with what he said when he took control. So when he took control, when he was obviously HTS and basically before that the Islamic State, he was hanging out with a bunch of fundamentalists who believed in a global caliphate on a worldwide level. You know, the original 7th century Islam, that we have to take over the world. When Jolani and his friends took control of Syria, brought down Assad, then they came out and said, okay, so this was our objective. We now have Syria. We're going to make Syria great again. So the fundamentalists, his former friends, were like, what? No, we don't care about Syria. It's not about Syria. It's about everywhere. That's why when the Islamic State was, well, the peak days of Islamic State, it became about Iraq and Syria. They had a chunk of Iraq and a chunk of Syria, and they wanted to have a chunk of Lebanon, for example, and a chunk of everywhere. Because they don't really care about nation states. These are globalists. Islam, the 7th century ideology, is the original established globalist ideology. One world government under the black flag of Islam. And that was their goal. When Al-Jolani said, well, I just want Syria. And I said, what? We can't do this. So technically, when he started wearing a suit and a tie, it was very insulting to his own former friends. Wonder how Islam would be today if Caliphate Umar didn't burn other Qurans around 650 AD. Thing is that the Islam has gone through so many changes, not just in terms of some of the books disappearing, but even early days, that it didn't really matter what sort of changes it goes through, because the chaos will always continue, but the division will always continue. This is one of the main reasons that Islam will never be able to win. Islam will never be able to take over the world. It's impossible. And they've tried many times. It's not a unifying ideology. It's not by actually convincing people. And inside it, everybody is divided. If you're not united, you can't take over the world. It's impossible. Now, AFC Manicure says, Maya, did you see Stephen Barrett? Yeah, was assaulted and dragged out of Marylebone Station. Yes, so I've just spoken to Stephen just before we came live. We're going to do a breaking news on that straight after this one. We've received the videos from Stephen. The good friend of 2CTV, Stephen Barrett, the barrister, was attacked in London at the train station, and we will cover that shortly after this. Jeff says, this may take a few more protests for it to settle. Yeah, and settle, I think the reality is Erdogan has a choice. Erdogan could send more support to the Syrian government and deal with this, or it could just abandon Jolani. If he abandons Jolani, that means that NATO has had a conversation with Turkey saying stay out. Everybody will just sit back and watch. Everybody, including Saudi Arabia. No one's going to touch this. Because they know the moment any country touches Syria, they're going to be blamed for whatever the result is. Because nobody's going to be happy with any result in Syria. It's a completely messed up place. It's very tribal. The poor Syrian people just can't catch a break. The average man and woman on the street have no voice, never have. They simply try to survive. Yeah, this is the biggest problem, by the way, because when you also have too many regime changes in a row, it becomes problematic because when people who become actual refugees, not those who just become economic migrants, those who are actual refugees, so those who are connected to families and people at the top or government, they can't stay because regime changes. When they leave the country, I don't know, they go to a neighboring country or they go to the West or whatever. And then 2 minutes later, that new regime changes again. They have a choice. They could go back, which they should. They could go back to their country, right? But then if the regime changes again, they're in a mess. But if they stay in Birmingham, then the new people who are against them from Syria are going to join them. It's a lose-lose situation. And this is the whole biggest problem that we have, because you can't just keep changing regimes. It's just embarrassing. You're not Man United changing managers every 2 seconds. Blue Sapphire says, oh no, if Assad comes back, he'll get hunted down. Yeah, I mean, based on what we saw today, even from the Alawites, it's not good time. But imagine if this whole thing goes badly for Jolani. The only place he has to go is Istanbul. He's going to have to move to Istanbul. And Assad has moved to Moscow. This one, going to go to Istanbul. Assad can't come back. And so at this point, you'd basically just have random people becoming leader of Syria and then just fleeing to some sort of neighboring country. And I'm not really sure how long they're going to keep doing this for, but it's not really a sane situation for normal people in Syria, the good people in Syria who simply want to live their lives. Let's go back to some of the reactions from the non-super chats. Syria, Iraq, Lebanon need to be Christian countries again. Islam out. This is the difference because there were a number of countries who were conquered by Islam. And some managed to keep their culture and their heritage because of their heritage. So, for example, when the Spanish, thanks to the Spanish royal family, who were they were technically in exile. They were still technically in Spain, but the other part. For centuries, they were fighting against the Islamic occupation, and they kicked Islam out and they make Spain Catholic again. Iran, when it used to be Persia, then it became Iran. Well, it was Iran, then Persia, then Iran. Went through the same thing. When Muhammad's army conquered, they really tried their best not to make everybody in Iran Islamic. That failed. But also tried to change the language, make it Arabic. And there were a number of big thinkers and poets and many others who tried their best in Iran centuries ago to keep the Persian language, and they successfully did it because they still had their heritage from the Persian civilization, the Persian Empire and everything else. But when you look at places like Iraq, when it's gone through so many changes over the centuries from the days of Babylon, it's no longer the same place, because the territory has changed as well, but the people changed since the conquest by Islam. It was very difficult in the 80s, in the 90s, even now, to expect people in Iraq, not necessarily to go to Christianity, but to move away from Islam, because it just became part of their blood. There were so many Arabs in Iraq. Technically, at the time, the Iraqis, way back in the day, were not really Arabs. Arabs were from Arabia, which is now Saudi Arabia, who then just basically started spreading around the region. But when you look at obviously places like Turkey, that used to be part of the Greek Empire, Iraq, which used to be Babylon, and obviously many changes after that. Obviously, then you had the Persian side. None of these places had anything to do with the Arab world, and obviously Judea, and obviously we have Israel. But things changed rapidly, and these guys managed to conquer everywhere, and by force, because obviously they raped everybody, they also managed to genetically change the face of these lands and these nations. But some of them kept their heritage, kept their culture, even if they had to hide it for a very, very long time, including the Zoroastrians in Iran, who is obviously the ancient Persian religion, which is a very peaceful religion. It's nothing really harmful. They kept their identity very quietly, but very peacefully, because they know they can wait until the return of Iran. If Assad returns, he will get the same end as Gaddafi. Yeah, he's not that stupid. So you can say a lot about Assad. He's not as stupid as Gaddafi or Saddam to be caught like that. That's why he realized he gotta go. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break because we have to come back with more breaking news coming this time from London, or Londonstan, as one of our good friends, Stephen Barrett, the barrister, has been attacked. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.